Today we're working on lesson 15, locating ordered pairs on the coordinate plane. And we're going to start by putting some notes in your math journal. So first we're just going to do some words that you need to know. So if you need to look back for a reference of what they mean. The x-axis is a horizontal number line in the coordinate plane. So remembering that it is the horizontal number line that goes left to right when you're finding a point on the x-axis. The y-axis is a vertical number line in the coordinate plane, remembering that it's our one that goes up and down. We kind of think of above 0 and below 0 when we think of the y-axis. The origin is the place where the x-axis and the y-axis meet, forming a 90-degree angle at the point 0, 0. So that middle part of the coordinate plane that we point to, that we start at every time when we are finding a point, that's called the origin. And it's where the x-axis and the y-axis meet. So it's where those two number lines meet. And be sure to slow this down or pause when you need to write something down. I know I'm going a little fast. Coordinate pair can also be called an ordered pair, and that is a set of two numbers that together represent a position on the coordinate plane. So yesterday we took time to find ordered pairs. Those can also be called coordinate pairs. And then just a couple of important facts to know about finding points on the coordinate plane. One is that you always start at the origin when locating points on the coordinate plane. So you find that 0, 0, you find that middle point, and you always start there when you're locating points on the coordinate plane. And then also that the coordinates of the origin are 0, 0. That's also something just to make sure that you know. When you finish these notes, then we will be working in your math book at lesson 15. Lesson 15 starts on page 147, and we're going to start by looking at the bottom of that page, which is example 2. So it says components of the coordinate plane. So we are at the very bottom of that page on looking at example 2. So we're actually going to look at this paragraph down here. So we already answered, I guess we'll start up here. All points on the coordinate plane are described with reference to the origin. What is the origin and what are its coordinates? We just said that. So the coordinates of the origin are 0, 0. And we know that it's where the two number lines meet. So this paragraph down here, though, we're going to fill in our answers. It says, to describe locations of points in the coordinate plane, we use, and we're going to put ordered pairs of numbers. Order is important. So on the coordinate plane, we use the form, and this is what we talked about yesterday, x, comma, y. So making sure you have those parentheses, x, y. The first coordinate represents the point's location from 0 on the x-axis, and the second coordinate represents the point's location from 0 on the y-axis. Just so if you need to look back at other notes, you kind of have this there as well. And then we're going to turn the page. So on the next page, you see exercises 1 through 3. And I've written some points over here to the left that we're going to graph. Exercise 1 says use the coordinate plane below to answer A through C. And A says graph at least 5 points on the x-axis and label their coordinates. So that means we're not labeling them in a quadrant necessarily. We want them to be lying on the x-axis. So we're going to use these points, 3, 0, 6, 0, negative 8, 0, negative 1, 0, and 4, 0. So if you want to write those down, because then I'm going to come over here and blow this coordinate plane up a little bit so we can graph those, and you can see it a little more clearly. So we know when we look at our coordinate plane that our middle, our origin is 0, 0. So that's going to be right here. And if I'm going to do 3, 0, which was my first point, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I put a dot. And I'm going to label that 3, 0. Another point that I could do on that x-axis, 6, 0, the second point that I wrote down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, I'm right here. I go 6 over, and if it's going to lie on the x-axis, then I'm not going up or down. Remembering this is our x-axis. If you need to label that, you can label that x and label that y. Next point, -8, 0. So again, I'm going to start at this origin. I'm going to go left 8 because I want to be in my negative. So -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to label that -8, 0. And then -1, 0. So that just starts at my origin and goes over 1, and I'm right here. -1, 0. And then the last point that I had written over here is 4, 0. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm actually going to write that below since it's so close to my 3. My 4 would be here, and then I put 4, 0. So I'm going to move over this way a little bit. It says graph at least 5 points on the x-axis and label their coordinates, which we did. Letter B says, what do the coordinates of your points have in common? So if we look at the coordinates of the points, which is what we have written over here, what do we notice they have in common? Well, all of them have a y coordinate of 0. So each point has a y coordinate of 0. So what must be true about any point that lies on the x-axis? Explain. So what we're looking at here is that when you're looking at graphing points and you see a 0 as your y coordinate, you need to know automatically that that's going to lie on your x-axis, okay? So that way, if you're graphing a point, because the zeros can sometimes be confusing, we know that anytime we're graphing a point with a y coordinate of 0, that it's going to lie on the x-axis. So we're going to say that if a point lies on the x-axis, the y coordinate is 0. So in exercise 2, it kind of asks us the same, only opposite. So it's telling us to graph at least 5 points on the y-axis and label their coordinates. So think about, what do you know about points that are going to lie on the y-axis? So we're just going to do a couple. We're going to do 0, 8, and we're going to do 0, -5. Sorry, that should not be a negative right there. So 0, 8, and 0, -5. Obviously, 0 is neither positive nor negative. I'm not sure why I did that. So let's just graph these two because I think we already know our answers to our questions that are down there. So if I have 0, 8, then I know that means I'm not going left or right, but I'm going to go up 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to put 0, 8. And then if I have 0, -5, again, I'm starting at my origin. I'm not going left to right because my x-coordinate is 0. And I'm going -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going all the way down to -5. And I'm going to put 0, -5. So we also know in letter C, it says what must be true about any point lies on the y-axis. So we already know that what our points have in common is that our x-coordinate is 0. So if a point lies on the y-axis, the x-coordinate is 0. And I know we didn't answer that middle problem, so it's okay if that one's blank. So we're going to move on to the next page. So you're actually going to turn to exercise 4. So your next page looks like this. Example 3, quadrants of the coordinate plane. We already have all that in our notes. So we're going to go down to exercise 4 where we're working on locating and labeling. So this gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points that we can locate and label. So we're going to look over at this coordinate plane and we're going to locate and label A, B, C, D, and E together. So remembering that we always start at the origin. So since you have your points on your book that you can look at, I'm going to make this bigger just to make it a little easier as we're locating them together. So I'm going to start at my origin, and my first point was 7, 2. So I'm going to start at my origin, at my 0, and I'm going to go over 7 to the right and up 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. I'm going to label that 7, 2. Point B is 3, negative 4. So again, I'm starting at my origin. I'm going to go to the positive side, 1, 2, 3, and then down negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. C is 1, negative 5. So I'm starting at the origin. I'm going over 1 because, again, I'm on my positive for my x coordinate. And then negative 5 is going to take me down below 0. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. 1, negative 5. Negative 3, 8. Again, I come back to my origin, and my x coordinate is that negative number. So I'm going to go negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and then up 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I put my point, negative 3, 8. And then negative 2, negative 1 is our last point. So I know I'm going to go negative 1, negative 2, and negative 1. Now, normally we always show what our quadrants are. I didn't start with that today because I kind of wanted to see how we would do, but let's go ahead and do that now. So this is quadrant 1, which is positive, positive. This is quadrant 2, which is negative, positive. This is quadrant 3, which is negative, negative. And this is quadrant 4, which is positive, negative. Remember, this is our x-axis, and this is our y-axis. So in exercise 5, it asks us to write coordinates of at least one other point in each of the 4 quadrants. So meaning that we have to look and know in quadrant 1 what could be another point. Any point that's positive, positive, right? In quadrant 2, what could be another point? Any point that's negative, positive. Quadrant 3, any point that's negative, negative. And quadrant 4, any point that's positive, negative. So I'm going to turn my page to exercise 5. And I know that in quadrant 1, I could pick any point that's positive, positive. So we could pick a point like 2, 3. For quadrant 2, I know it's going to have to be a negative, positive. So I'm going to say negative 5, 1. Quadrant 3, any point that's negative, negative. So let's do negative 1, negative 6. And then for quadrant 4, a point that's positive, negative. So let's say we do 5, negative 4. So 6, we're going to skip, which is down here at the bottom. And then we're going to turn to our problem set. So your problem set is on page 157. My page looks a little different than yours because my lesson summary is at the top of the problem set. Yours is not. Yours is right after what we just did, but then your problem set is not until page 157. So you're going to want to turn your book to page 157. On the problem set, what I would like for you to do is number 1, A, B, C, D, and E. So circle number 1. So number 1 says name the quadrant in which each of the points lies. If the point does not lie in a quadrant, specify which axis the point lies on. So think about those zeros as an x or a y coordinate. So you're going to do number 1. And then number 2 asks you a question, and you have to tell whether you agree or disagree and explain your answer. So you also have a coordinate plane down here. I don't want you to do number 3, but I do want you to label these points on this quadrant. So I want you to label A, B, C, and E. D has a decimal point, so I'm not going to have you label D as it stands. Let's do D as 9, 7 rather than 9 2/10, 7. So again, I'm going to have you label A, B, C, and E on this coordinate plane, and then D, label it as 9, 7. So that way you're not worried about the decimal. So again, you're going to do number 1, name the quadrant. Number 2, read Jackie's claim, tell whether you agree or disagree, and explain. You're not doing the number 3, but you are labeling A, B, C, and E. and then also D as 9, 7 on this coordinate plane. When you finish that,